Hey, Angela, I can still say good morning.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alex Knippenberg. I'm a senior staff attorney at Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A. And, I'll be talking to you today about foreclosure. What is foreclosure? What happens when you're in foreclosure? And what can you do to avoid foreclosure and how you can get out of foreclosure? First, I'll just talk a little bit about my organization. I primarily, I represent people in court who are in foreclosure. So if there's a lawsuit filed, I can represent you in court, in settlement conferences, or further in litigation. We also represent people prior to the lawsuit being filed. So if you're in foreclosure but there hasn't been a lawsuit filed, you can obviously contact our office and seek assistance. And I also do bankruptcy work. Bankruptcy is another way, another area where you can avoid foreclosure, and it all depends on your circumstances. But bankruptcy can be another avenue for you to avoid foreclosure, or in general, if you're going through hard financial times, bankruptcy can be beneficial to you. So, as we're all getting out of COVID, and it's been a year, maybe it's been more than a year since COVID has been ending. During COVID, the courts were closed, and lenders were not allowed to foreclose on the properties. And as we're getting out, there has been a lot of people who have been in default, and we've been seeing that there's a lot more court cases that have been filed. There's a lot more foreclosures going on. I primarily deal with Brooklyn and Queens, and I can see that how busy the courts are getting, and it's a real problem everywhere, and it's important to know. I hope that none of you would have to go through a process like this, but you never know, if you're going through some kind of a hardship, or if you can pass this information to some of your friends or anyone you know. So it's important to know how foreclosure works in New York and what kind of various things you can do. So what is foreclosure? You remember in the beginning, Angela said that to her, foreclosure is when the property is getting auctioned off. That's when the house is already foreclosed on. But in New York, foreclosure is actually a very, very long process. It's not an easy process. And in New York, it's a judicial process. In some other states, for example, if the bank wants to foreclose on you, they don't have to go through court. In New York, they do have to go through court. And there are a lot of laws, and there are a lot of various things set up to help homeowners who are in foreclosure, to assist them. So if you are behind on your payments, don't be afraid that, okay, you're behind on your payments, the bank can just file a lawsuit, and the next day they can put your home for an auction and sell it. That's not how it works. As long as, you don't throw your head in the sand, or, you get to, you're behind on payments and you don't know what to do and don't do anything. As long as you don't do that, as long as you seek help from various services like legal housing organizations like NHS Brooklyn, or from various legal service providers who are all free in New York, as long as you seek help in time, you can try to avoid it, and you can try to fix your situation. Because, as I said, it's a very long process in New York, and a lot of roadblocks are set up to try to save you. So, everyone knows when you buy a house, what do? You take out a mortgage, and you also sign a note. And then when a hardship occurs, or when something happens, and when there's been several months when you're no longer able to make payments, a foreclosure process can start. So the first thing that the lender needs to do when they start the foreclosure process, they file something called a summons and complaint with the court to initiate the process. But even before filing the summons and complaint, there's a lot of other different requirements that the lenders need to comply with before the lawsuit is even started. For example, there's a special notice that we call a 90-day notice that they need to send to all homeowners who reside at the property or in foreclosure. For example, if they don't comply with that notice requirement, you can eventually dismiss your foreclosure case. And those requirements are very strict. You might laugh at those requirements because one of the requirements, for example, is the notice has to be in 14-point font. It seems funny, but that's a requirement. And if you don't comply with it, you can dismiss your case like way down the road if they don't comply with it. You know, the language has to be very specific when they send you this notice. They have to provide a list of housing council organizations like NHS Brooklyn, so you can contact them. They have to provide you, you know, the exact amount that you owe, so the exact amount that you're behind and the number of days you're behind. And the notice is required. So if you are getting this notice, you have to start thinking, oh, okay, so the bank probably hired some lawyer now, so soon they're gonna begin a foreclosure action against me. So this is the time where you have to reach out to someone. Even if you're still going through hardship, even if you're still unable to make your payments, but you think, you know, you might resolve it at some point, you still should reach out to any, like, legal service providers or housing counselors, as I said many times, because they can still assist you with anything, and there are many ways they can try to resolve the problem. So, how do you resolve foreclosure? Obviously, you know, if you are unable to make payments, you have to consider all the options, such as selling the house or anything like that. But, you know, if your hardship is over, you know, a lot of you probably know what loan modification is. A loan modification is, you know, if you're behind your mortgage, you put a financial package together to your lender, you submit all of your financial information, and they can modify the terms of your loan. They can modify the interest rate, they can modify and extend the term, for example, to lower your payments. And they can do various other things which would change the terms of your loan and would allow you to begin making monthly payments again. Current problem with loan modifications is, you know, if you see the news, you know that the interest rates are crazy high right now. So right now, if you apply for a loan modification, most likely your payments are not going to go down. And that's a problem to a lot of homeowners, because obviously the reason the default happened in the first place is a lot of times because they could not afford the payments. Do you have a question?
Yeah, can the FHA 40-year loan be used as a substitute for loan application to help?
Oh, yeah, I was actually going to talk into that, what kind of a loan you have. But so you have to make sure first you have an FHA loan, and then FHA has like very, very strict guidelines to what's going to happen when you submit a loan modification.
It's okay, don't mind that.
Yeah.
This is where the good things.
So FHA has like very strict guidelines compared to like private owners. So if you're behind on your payments, FHA will likely give you a loan modification. There's something called partial claim with FHA loans. So whatever like the missed payments are, they can be put on the back of your loan, and you don't have to make any payments on it, and it's interest free. But right now, FHA is also bound to like the government interest rates, and like the couple of loan modifications with FHA that I've seen recently have a very, very high interest rate, which is not good for homeowners because the payments are still going to be high and not always affordable. Does it make sense? Okay, thank you. But that's a good point that you brought up, because I was going to get into my next point is it's very important to know what kind of a mortgage you have. You know, and there are a lot of different mortgages. Like the gentleman mentioned, there's something called FHA, which stands for Federal Housing Administration. There are loans that are Fannie and Freddie Mac that are also kind of government loans, but not like FHA. And then there are private loans. The reason you should know what kind of a loan you have, because a lot of them have very different guidelines of what is going to happen to your loan when you're in default, what is going to happen to your loan when you apply for loan modification. So FHA has one set of guidelines when you apply, and they're gonna abide by them, and you know they're gonna set the interest rate how the government sets the interest rate. The good thing about FHA is, you know, as long as your hardship is over, almost always you will get a loan modification, and you will also get something known as partial claim, where the missed payments will be put on the back of the loan. Then, you know, with a private lender, you kind of never know what's going to happen. There are private lenders who might give you great terms, and there could also be private lenders who say, nope, we're not giving you a loan modification, we don't want to work with you. And then, you know, when something like this happens, is you have to deal in court with that, and so on. Another important thing to know, and as I mentioned, if if you're behind, but you don't think you can manage the payments, another reason to reach out to various different organizations, because there are often grants or loans and other things available to homeowners that can help them either reinstate the mortgage or help them financially. Reinstate means, every month you're making the mortgage payment, and if you stop making, interest starts accumulating on it, and the interest is usually whatever the amount of monthly payment is. So reinstating means paying off all the missed payments and starting all over again. So when we came out of COVID, we had something called Homeowner Assistance Fund, which helped homeowners and gave them money to pay back missed payments. Unfortunately, the fund is closing now, but there's still other programs available. For example, if you're a senior or disabled, there's something called IRMA. Equitable mortgage, what does it stand for?
Reverse mortgage.
No, it's not reverse
What is
anymore.
that?
It's not reverse anymore because it's for
They
everyone
changed it,
now.
right,
They changed
for
it.
everyone, yeah.
Equitable I forgot what it stands for.
Yeah, don't worry.
But they can give you up to $50,000 if you're a senior or if you're disabled and you're behind on your mortgage payments. So if you're going through hardship, please reach out to anyone to try to assist you with something like that. All right, let me get into when the case actually starts. So as I mentioned, when the foreclosure begins, you're served with a summons and complaint, and you have to go to court. So what do? You need help. So the first and one of the most important things to do after you seek help is you need to file an answer to the summons and complaint. In the answer, you'll be able to set your side of the story. You'll be able to tell your side of the story. You will set the defenses that you might have against the lender or the foreclosure company. Maybe they mistreated you in some way. Maybe they did not send you that notice that I was talking about earlier. Maybe there was something else that you did that you want to put on. The thing is, if you don't file an answer on time, you cannot bring these defenses again. And because a lot of homeowners, obviously they're not legal experts. A lot of people do miss the deadline and don't file the answer on time. And it's very hard to resolve the case later if the answer is not filed. Unfortunately, in New York, fortunately in New York, there's a law that helps homeowners and gives them a second chance. So when foreclosure cases begin, they do not go straight to a judge. A judge doesn't get to decide the matters right away. What happens is you go into mandatory meetings called settlement conferences, which are kind of like mediation sessions. During the course of those settlement conferences, you and your attorney and the lender and their attorney sit down together and you try to resolve your case. And the case will not proceed to the judge until various of those settlement conferences happen. And those settlement conferences happen in all residential foreclosures. If you are a homeowner and if you meet all the residential part eligibility, you would have to go to those settlement conferences. A referee presides over those settlement conferences. And basically, you try to come up with a solution and mediate, about what's going on. Most often homeowners apply for loan modification to see what happens. And as I was talking about the answer, as long as you attend your first settlement conference, you will get a second chance to file your answer, and you will have 30 additional days after the first settlement conference to file the answer. Most of those settlement conferences are staffed by various legal aid attorneys, like our organization or a lot of other great organizations in New York. And they're all, we're sponsored by the Attorney General, and all of those organizations are free, and they can provide you with legal help, and they can help you file the answer, and they can help you represent on those settlement conferences. And, as I said, if you don't file, it's just so much easier for the lender to foreclose on your house later, even, if you think you have a great settlement chance. So those settlement conferences, they can last for a while, as long as parties are working towards a solution together. A loan modification is not the only way you can resolve your case. As I said, there are programs like we used to have half and IRMA, so you can reinstate your loan. you don't wanna deal with the property anymore and you just wanna sell, you can always sell your property and not go to the judge and just resolve it there. You can try to apply for a repayment plan, and oftentimes you can be creative. But the most common way to resolve the issue is just to apply for loan modification and see what happens in there. If you settle, then that's it, your case is over. You know, if you get a loan modification, you never see the judge, the case is done, you don't have to go anywhere. Only if you cannot settle or agree on a settlement in your case, then the settlement conferences are done, and then the case proceeds to the judge. That's where the answer is important. If you did not file one or did not file one on time, the lender just forecloses on you, and it's a lot, you know, you can still put up some defenses, but it's a lot harder for you, and it's a lot easier for the lender just to foreclose on the property and eventually put the property up for an auction. But if you did file an answer, then it's another incentive for the lender to give you something like a loan modification, because they have to spend a lot of money on their lawyers too, and oftentimes they don't, and especially if you have very good defenses, they don't want to deal with it. So if that happens, then there's a lot of litigation that's going on, and you can settle with them at any point too. Even if the case has been released from settlement conference and it goes into litigation, you can still apply for loan modification anytime you want. You can still come up with any settlement solutions anytime up to the day of the auction. And then, you know, the auction is the last part that you would have to go through. So this is basically an overview of the foreclosure process in New York. I believe the folks from my Attorney General office are going to talk about scams and deed theft. I just want to mention that it's very important as well. And a lot of folks who are in foreclosure, they get targeted right away by people who are trying to prey on you, trying to, you know, try to steal your property or try to scam you in one way or another, because foreclosure is a public record. And when people are vulnerable, those scammers try to prey on them, they try to, you know, get in touch with you and, you know, try to steal what is owned from you. All right, are there any questions?